You are listening to Spotlight Sessions with Justin Bamforth. The program provides an inside look at the creative field through exclusive conversations with industry professionals. Every episode is recorded live each month in the Adobe Creative Career Discord. Check out the show links to learn more and join for free, or visit adobediscord.com and click on Adobe Creative Career. This episode was previously recorded before a live listening audience. For 20 years and counting, London's finest, Mr. Richard Irving, has been leading creative teams in the design and editorial space for some of the retail industry's leading fashion corporations. Some of these include being the creative director for the Old Navy brand over at Gap and Abercrombie and Fitch, where he is currently the senior creative director for the Hollister brand. Now, Richard is one of those incredible mentors I mentioned earlier in this Discord, and tonight he joins us here for an exclusive one-on-one discussion. Richard Irving, my friend, welcome to Spotlight Sessions.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the invitation.
Well, let's begin. Let's start with your origin story, right? So how did you begin your creative journey, and what initially sparked your interest in design?
Yeah, so a lot of this is going to be like me falling into it. And a lot of this is going to be me kind of like being, not too hot at high school, kind of in a space where I was like really trying to find my feet, trying to figure out what to do. Grades were like fine, never like a total A student. But then someone, I was always interested in art and like design and technology, woodshop, as you guys would call it maybe in the States. And that was just something that I always enjoyed, like the design and the creative part of things. But I never had any guidance on where that would take me or what that would lead to. And then literally sat down with some guidance counselor one day, and they were like, "Have you ever tried? You want to go to like technical college and do like a art and design course?" And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds like the right move for me." So, that's partly I wasn't someone who was like sitting down like drawing as a kid or have that kind of like epiphany moment. It was really just something that I was just kind of like guided to as I went through school. So yeah, and then I got to obviously do that art and design course where I learned about graphic design and picked up Photoshop and typography for the first time, and those were the things that really resonated with me. So it took me until about like 16, 17 where I could really kind of get my teeth into my interests, and get my teeth into things that really excited me as a person and started to explore, and I explored a lot of things like painting and drawing and, screen printing. And then someone sat me in front of a computer and taught me about typography, and I never really looked back. So yeah, that's my like total origin story. Not like crazy inspiring, but something that's like, something that just takes those moments where you can kind of just like follow your heart a little bit and follow your dreams and kind of see where things take you. And a lot of people take that road and don't feel like it's the right decision for them. But luckily enough, I got down that road, and some people didn't think it was going to be the right road for me and told me that I was making a mistake. But I kept following what I really wanted to do, and it seems to be working out.
Graphic design always changes, right? It's really interesting how it evolves, and it kind of reflects and mirrors society. What was it like back then? What were your first impressions of graphic design?
Yeah, so obviously back when I mentioned we didn't have internet in our rooms and dorms and stuff in college and things like that. My first sample of graphic design was no one really had laptops at that point. Like the MacBook Pro didn't exist. Things like that. You couldn't like in a sense like portably take your graphic design with you wherever you went like you could today. So I think there was lots of differences there where we would either be like in a computer room, renting a computer for a couple of hours to like get an assignment done. But there was a lot of more like hand tactile pieces and parts to my education, which I thought was really super valuable. Like, I was taught how to take a photograph, how to develop a photograph, how to take a photograph from conception all the way through to putting it into the final layout. Onto the computer. So learning all about that was super valuable too. I went to college at St. Martin's College of Art and Design in London, which was a really honorable place to go, and I was really humbled by that. But they were really adamant about us knowing how to utilize and how to create the things that we were using within graphic design. So photography, typography, bookmaking, things like that. Like you had to like they were like, you have to learn like the fundamentals of what you're going to be like kind of doing in your profession, from a sense of like not just like taking a photograph from Google or whatever and putting it in the layout. It's like, no, you have to like go create it. You have to go and design your own font to like make this poster, or things like that. So a lot of that was hands-on, um so that was the part that I think has really been really kind of valuable for me throughout my career, because it's like allowed me to kind of be really good at photography, have a good opinion on it, know how to crop a photograph, know how to lay something out with the right kind of weighting and kerning and leading. Like I did literally like letterpress, like letterpress, about all of those things too. Like you learn where all these like terms come from. And I love telling people at work, I'm like, you know where the word leading came from? And they're like, no. And you're like basically telling them that like it was actual lead, like spacing in between, when they were doing letterpress and things like that. So having that knowledge has really kind of helped me, you know, forward into utilizing that as like a knowledge base for myself, from like a fundamentals perspective, but also learning how to adapt that into the digital space too as things have progressed on. So yeah. So the start was really interesting and really more hands-on for me, which I thought was really great.
Well, how important are those fundamentals today, right? Because a lot of designers go straight to the computer, mainly because it's easier and because it's faster. But in your opinion, how important is it to use paper and pencil and to do thumbnails, to do sketches, to explore creative ideas? Do you do that today?
I think it's definitely like each to their own kind of thing. I'll still play around with, obviously I have digital cameras, but I also have film cameras too. I literally have like a calligraphy set sitting next to me on the desk right here, where I'll kind of just play around with some lettering once in a while. I love stamps, so sometimes I'll get stamps made out of like logos that I've made and things like that, and do some creation with that too. I love vintage shopping too, so I'll take like vintage books and things like that and start to kind of like cut stuff out. So there's still that inherent kind of like tactile piece that I find really interesting, and I know some people would find that interesting, some people wouldn't. But I think there's something to it that kind of like from an osmosis kind of piece, right? Where you're like absorbing the physical nature of layout and graphic design and the functionality of that, where you're like feeling a book and like how to design for the physical space versus how to design for the digital spaces. There's a lot of difference there, but a lot of things that you can really take from one to the other, right? So I think there's something really interesting how how you can kind of like continue to kind of have those interests that interest you as a digital person or as a physical person, that can really kind of help you broaden your horizons from from if you're working in a digital space where you pick up a book, you might see some interesting layout there that might kind of inspire you for the digital space. So I think there's a lot of crossover there that can be really helpful.
All right, so let's get into the fashion world because that's where a lot of your experience lies. How the heck did you get into the fashion world?
That's a really good question. And again, it's one of the things I kind of fell into. So, I went to St. Martin's College of Art and Design, and that's where I met my wife. And she had studied at LCF, which is the London College of Fashion, and then also at Chelsea College of Fashion also, and went on to do print design there. So I met her, had no interest in retail and fashion like at all. Was really more interested in kind of the architectural world, which is kind of the first few jobs that I had in London and New York, which was the kind of first piece and parts in that of my career. And all that time, my wife's she's graduated and she worked for Chloe for a minute, and then she worked for Ellie Tahari, if you've heard that brand before. It's more of an older brand. And they're based in New York, and I always had that kind of like within my sphere of influence was my wife, who was doing a lot of amazing work from a fashion perspective. And then Abercrombie Fitch came knocking on our door while we were in New York, and they were asking my wife, what does your husband do? And she was like, oh, well, he's a graphic designer. And they were like, oh, great. Well, seeing as we're going to move you guys out to Ohio, we probably want to talk to your husband too. So lo and behold, I had interviews and got a graphic design job with Abercrombie Fitch, and that kind of really propelled me into the retail fashion space. And obviously like 15, 14, 15 years later, I'm still hanging out. So there must be something I love about it. But it's really interesting to me, how I kind of fell into that and how much I've loved that over the last kind of like, over a decade now.
A lot of people think that the fashion world is like, isolated to New York, right? But you're in Ohio. I
Yeah.
used to work for Charming Shops, which later became a Cena retail group. Yeah,
Mhm.
one of the brands that they own, Lane Bryant, right? They're based in Ohio. What
Yeah.
is it about Ohio?
It's cheap to be a business.
There you
Yeah.
go.
And it's interesting, right? Because when you start to work for a brand like this, and you start to run a team, and they're like, "Oh, well, you have people you can hire on your team," and you're like, "Okay, cool." So we know that the people who are really, it sounds really strange to say, but are really kind of like into their career and are into fashion are more like on like a coastal city, right? Like in New York or LA. And trying to persuade them to come to Columbus, Ohio and work for Abercrombie Fitch, they're like, cool, it's Abercrombie Fitch. And then they're like, oh, I have to move to Ohio. That was our kind of reaction too. But then we came and saw they have a beautiful campus in Ohio. So that kind of sold us on it. But at the same time, it's like we've spent a long time persuading really talented people to move to Columbus, Ohio. And some people stick and some people don't. Um, but it's easier, right? Because we can be a little bit more open to people working remotely and things like that. If we really, really like them, we have that option these days, which is fantastic. I won't say thank you, COVID, but but it's been much more open, right? From a hiring perspective, which has made it easier. But yeah, there's a lot of businesses coming out here now, which Intel is making a huge factory here. It's like one of the biggest chip factories coming out here. Amazon has factories here. Facebook and Meta, like they all have data centers out here. So it's becoming like a bit of a hub really for cheap real estate and businesses.
Yeah, and that's so important that you brought up the remote aspect too, because
Hmm.
I think a lot of people don't realize that just because a company doesn't have it explicitly stated in their job description that it's a remote position, doesn't mean that a company isn't opposed to it. Like you said, if you really like somebody, right, you're going to consider all options.
I think we're coming to the other side of the wave of what happened over the last 3 or 4 years. But even before that happened, we were still opening ourselves up to remote positions, right? It's all about the talent. It's all about if we're super excited about this person, then we're like, okay, cool, let's like make this work. We've had people that we've loved in Columbus that are like, well, I just really want to be in New York, or that's where my life is, and that's where my family is, or things like that. But we're like, oh my God, this person's so talented, and we love this person, so we're gonna make it work. And a similar thing happened for me at Gap to where they were excited enough to for me to be remote. So that's why I'm still in Columbus, Ohio, because that's where. And I work for Gap. They're based in San Francisco, but they were, excited enough to have me join the team from, the other on another time zone. So um, it's interesting how it kind of slowly started to open up, then really opened up, obviously, through COVID, and now it's kind of calming down a little bit again. But the people who can get companies excited about what they do and really kind of show off their talent, those are the people that can kind of maintain roles like that from different parts of the country.
So let's say I'm a job seeker out there and I
Hmm.
really want to come work for your company, right? But I don't want to move to Columbus. But I want to impress you, right? So that you offer that remote thing. How should I approach that? How should I like bring that up? Should I just like not? Should I let you bring it up first as the hiring manager, or how would that work?
It's true. It's an interesting, like, what's the kind of aim of the game, right? And every company and every leader within that company is going to have their own subjective point of view of like when to do it. But I think it's just about sometimes it's like kind of like the salary conversation now, where it's become a little bit of like I'm gonna find the right moment to talk about it. With the salary thing, it's like I always advocate like get them really excited about you first and then talk about salary because you can always push it off and say no, I don't want to talk about that. This is a completely different subject now, but but the remote thing is kind of a similar conversation where it's like being upfront about it, and they'll ask you about location, whether you're open to moving like almost immediately when you interview. I've just spent a long time, like 4 months, interviewing with lots of different places and talking to lots of different companies, and they will pretty much always ask you location and salary straight off the bat. Um, but part of that response that I've given is if this opportunity becomes something that I'm excited about, I'm willing to talk about location with you guys down the road if you are, and if you're not, then you should be upfront about it, like pretty much there and then. And they might be like, oh well, this role is only in this location. Are you willing to move? So then it's just a case of whether they're open to, and then you have to come back with like, well, are you open to this being remote? And I think that's just an honest kind of like conversation that you've got to have, because it will lead to some people saying no. But I think you have to be open to that, and finding the right place that works for you will be open to what you want to do.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful because a lot of times we see these remote positions, but there's like hundreds of people, sometimes
Mm,
thousands of people applying to it. And then you have these in-office positions and there's only like 20 people, 30 people, right?
mm,
And I'm pulling this from like LinkedIn numbers because sometimes you can see that if you're a LinkedIn premium member.
yep.
Landing that first job can certainly be challenging. But what was your experience when you were trying to land your very first gig?
Yeah, I've got a very real experience in when I started, because when I graduated, I mean, my story is that I went to St. Martin's College of Art and Design, right? And if you know about good courses in the world, that's one of the best courses to go on to for graphic design. So I went through the whole program, and I got really confident, and I thought I was really great, and I was like, holy shit, I'm gonna land like the best job after this because I'm like the shit, and I'm like totally like the best thing, and I went to the best college and all this kind of crap. And so I graduated, and I had a couple of interviews that I kind of flubbed and didn't do very well in, and had to do some projects and didn't do a very good job with them. And you know, it took me it took me 6 months to get my first job. I had to basically work in a bar. I basically learned the hard way, and the very hard way of like not networking throughout my career, and not throughout my college years, and then also not interning either. So I pretty much left without any work experience. And that I think that was the hardest part, and the biggest thing that I learned was that if I could go back now, I would have done a lot more networking and a lot more kind of work experience in my college years to gain that traction, to gain kind of just some sense of connection with the industry prior to me graduating, because that took me a long time. And when I did get my first job, it wasn't the most ideal job, but I took it, and it was a start for me, and it just kind of like got me off the ground. So it was really really tough getting my first job, Justin. Yeah.
So there you have it, folks. Even for Richard Irving, it is tough to get a job, but just hang in there, right?
Yeah, and that's what I had to do. I got a job at a bar, and worked that bar in the hours that I needed to, and then in the day back in that time, I'd trudge myself down to the local internet cafe, and I would go apply for jobs, and I would just keep reaching out and keep going around, and keep kind of showing up at agencies and giving them a copy of my portfolio. Like you didn't have a website back then, so it's a lot different, but and I just kept going. So, and then lo and behold, my dad sent me the job that I got. He sent me the job description of the job that I got. It's pretty hilarious.
Now, what were some of those conversations like? I want to hear about like some of the most awkward conversations when you're handing your portfolio to some random stranger. You're looking
Hmm.
for a big break. How did they receive it? Were they like, "Oh, this kid, like, who are you?" Or what
Oh
was that
yeah,
like?
yeah. Sometimes you would call ahead and say that I'm coming in. They'd be like, "Great, come in," blah blah blah, and you would hopefully talk to someone, and sometimes they'd be like, "Oh, like this person would be willing to talk to you right now," and you'd have a bit of a conversation, and you'd have some good conversations and some like kind of like rude conversations too. I think the world has changed a lot since those days. And then some of them you'd be dropping your portfolio off, like, and basically you'd see the person just like put it on the desk to your side, and you'd be like, I'm never gonna hear from these people like ever. So, and it's kind of similar to what the world is like today. That was just a more physical version of it. You're sending your emails out to people. You're putting your resume into the what I call the black hole of industry corporate websites, and you're really getting like not a lot of return for your time investment of like trying to gain a job, right? You're applying to like 30 jobs and you're maybe not hearing from any of them. So and then you're trying to like kind of get that momentum going. But you feel like you're throwing into a bit of a black hole. And the advice there is that tomorrow could be a day when you hear from somebody, or in the next hour you could hear from somebody. So those are the things that have to keep you going, and then you have to kind of take breaks from that for a minute, right, and go enjoy your life for a minute. While obviously knowing you need a job, but knowing that like you need to obviously rest and take breaks from work too. So your job is to get a job, right? So that's just how you got to play it.
For those of you just tuning in now, we're listening to Richard Irving. He was the creative director over at Gap for the Old Navy brand, and now he is at Abercrombie and Fitch as the senior creative director for the Hollister brand. Speaking of being a creative director, walk us through like some of those steps that led you from a newbie just graduating from school to leading the show at some of these big brands. I mean, what were the steps to get there?
Yeah, it's really interesting. You're playing a long game for sure. Like you can't graduate from college and expect to be a creative director in 5 years. If you want to do your own business and do your own creative, then great. But within the industry, I've always worked in-house. So I've gone from the kind of start out graphic designer who's just come from college, and I think it's been about doing the work, but it's also been about like keeping my head up and seeing and seizing opportunities along the way. Really advocating for myself and not waiting until I get handed something. That's been really helpful for me. So, I've gone from like a very early kind of like branded print space for the first kind of like 5 to 7 years of my career, and then and at that point I'd run up to managing a team of like, excuse me, about 3 or 4 designers. And then I was like, you know what? Like, I'm done with this bit. I need to now build the next phase of what I'm doing. And the digital space is becoming like a really big deal. This was back in like 2011, 12, right? When company websites became part of like the e-com space that you see today. That was pretty clunky versus what it was today, versus what it is today. And then seeing that space and then seeing social media and paid advertising and all that kind of like digital space really grow. That was me. I had started off in that print design space, and then I was like, okay, cool. I need to go like work over here for a minute and go experience that space. And I had an opportunity within a company to do that. I was with Abercrombie Fitch before Gap, and now I'm back at Abercrombie Fitch again. But that ability to see the next thing that's coming allowed me to work in that print space, then work in that digital space, and then be offered a job. And then I was offered that job, but I worked on getting offered that job. If you know what I mean, like through networking and conversations and things like that. And then I got a chance to bring it all together. So they were like, oh, well, now we're working into this more like omni-channel marketing space where we need the head of creative to be looking over like print and digital and the store space and the econ space and paid advertising. And we want it all to be consistent and creatively consistent together. Do you want to do that? And I'm like, yeah, of course I want to do that. So what I think is the key to growth is looking for the opportunity yourself within the space, like almost almost knowing the moment where you have to be like, okay, now it's time for this new thing to add to. So what I've done over my career is just to like add to my skill sets over time. I now oversee a full design and a full editorial copy team too. And I've never done the editorial copy thing before. So that's an additional arm of skill set. And I spent the last year doing more photography and art direction and really kind of honing that skill. So basically over the time, I've basically kind of had a bunch of boxes to check for a creative director and been like, okay, if I'm going to be a successful creative director, I need to be good at these things, and created that kind of like mental plan for myself, and then just went after all of those different things. So yeah, so I think it's about where do you want to be, creating that plan in your mind, and then creating those check boxes and being like, cool, if I'm going to get to that spot, I'm going to need to know these things to do that. And how do I kind of judge my career and kind of work my way into those spaces to be able to be successful at the thing that I want to be good at, that I'm aiming for.
Yeah, that's a good idea to kind of create like a strategy. Where do you want to be in 3 months, in 6 months, a couple years from now? Because that's going to determine the choices that you make and the skills that you pick up. I think a lot of times designers get so caught up in what's important in this moment, right? What's popular. It's like UX, especially that's really popular. There's a lot of graphic designers who feel like they have to learn UX because it's simply in all these job descriptions. Well, think about your goals, right? As an individual. Is that something that excites you?
Yep. Yeah, super. It sounds weird when someone sits you down and said like, what's your career plan and where do you want to be? It sounds really cheesy, but it's really helpful. It just gives you that kind of guiding light and what you want to manifest, you know? And I'm a big believer in like manifestation and things like that help you to get where you need to be. And I think your life path is sometimes unpredictable, but I think you've got some control over it. And I think, lifting your head up from your screen, if you're a graphic designer or an illustrator or whatever, lifting your head up from your screen and seeing some of those kind of career changing and team changing and performance changing opportunities will help you grow, and kind of taking some initiative as well will be a huge growth driver for you in your career, because people will see you as a person who can really lead something and change something. So if that's what you're after.
And being a creative director, it's not just all about doing amazing design work, is it? There's a lot of meetings and paperwork and meetings and endless emails and good Lord, more meetings, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
It's not for everybody.
yeah, it's been a really, I'll say it's always been a really interesting transition to go from being like a doer, who's like someone who's like really good at their craft, who's like, you're like, I'm a great graphic designer, versus I'm a great, it sounds weird to say, but I'm like a leader in the creative space. It's different. Like, you're not doing as much creative work. You're not sitting there doing as much layouts. It really depends on the size of the company, but you're not sitting there doing the layouts. Like, you have a team, and it feels wrong. Kind of feels wrong for a minute. You know, it seems like you're like, am I doing a job here? And what you have to keep remembering is that what you're progressing to do is being a director, is that you're like, a director of a movie isn't like starring in the movie, right? You have to like think about it as in like, they're the ones behind the scenes as the like puppeteer that's like making sure the actors know their lines, and making sure the lighting's good, and making sure the cinematographer knows what they're doing, and making sure that the next scene is set, and like and you're telling the story. Like, it's almost like, if you think about it like that, I think that's a really great way to frame it up, because you're not the one who's starring in the movie. And I think that's and what you have to also become too is like a humble leader who has empathy too for the people that are working for you. Like, if that's the type of leader you want to be. I've seen different types, but I think it's important to be able to kind of nurture and work with and mentor the people that you're working with, and share the skills that you've learned over your time, and be the one that attends all of the meetings and knows what's going on, so that you can direct it. And yeah, Elizabeth said, get used to the meetings here. You have to, but it's like, you're like, wait, am I not gonna create anymore? But you are like, You're just creating in a different way.
And it requires different skills. Like you mentioned earlier, you're like a director in a movie, right? You're allowing your casting crew to shine. You're just kind
Mhm.
of guiding them toward this eventual goal. I've known people who don't want to be art directors or creative directors anymore because they just love to do the hands-on design work, and that's fine too. So you kind of have to look at where you're at in your goals. What wakes you up in the morning? What gets you excited? That's what you should go for. Every career also has its challenges, and you kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier. One of those being laid off, and I
Mhm.
know you experienced that recently. How did you stay positive throughout it?
That's a good question. I never had it happen to me. I think people who haven't had it happen to them think that and I made it through the 2008 recession and didn't get laid off. And you think you're kind of bulletproof at some point, but it happens to the best of people, I think. What happened to me at Gap happened to a lot of people at the same time, which is very unfortunate. But what I had to see was that this was maybe maybe a gift to something different, and a gift to something new. It was stressful. It was hard. There was lots of joy and there was lots of tears. Jobs that I just almost like dream jobs that I almost got, that you get kind of passed over at the last minute. Jobs and conversations that you have with people that are, in your desperation, you have conversations with people that you are, um, for jobs that you're overqualified for, and then you kind of get into the self doubt phase too. And I think it was definitely, I could say, it was definitely a roller coaster of emotions for sure. Um, and then all of a sudden, two or three things come along at the same time, and you're left at the end with a couple, like two or three job offers that you have to choose from, and you're like, oh my god, this is great. Which is, which was my experience. But it was definitely a roller coaster to get there, like a big emotional roller coaster. Definitely some moments of like mental health moments that I had to get through. And I think, and some therapy and things like that. I think it's just about kind of remaining positive in a sense of knowing that the right thing will come along for you that is meant to be. And then also just like continuing to work hard at it, and pushing for what you want, and knowing that your worth is more than what other people's expectations are of you, if that made sense. Um, know your own worth and know yourself, and you'll find the thing that's right for you. So I think that's a big thing to take away. Like if it happens to you, or it has just happened to you, or you're looking for a job right now because you've been laid off, because a lot of people have been. It's a roller coaster, but keep going and keep connecting with people. And the right thing, like I said earlier, like it can either be come along in the next hour, or it could come along in the next month, or come along in the next year. But whatever happens, it's more than likely going to be the right thing for you.
And remember what happened soon after that occurred for you. You messaged me one day and said, "Hey, I just want to chat," right?
Yeah.
And you explained to me what you were doing. You were reaching out to all of your contacts, and you were just scheduling just a 30-minute, 60-minute call with everybody
Hmm.
just to see what's going on, right? To catch up, to see if that could lead to something else.
Yeah.
And you never know. I mean, sometimes it probably most of the time, right? It led to nothing, but sometimes it leads to someone else who knows someone else who knows someone else. It's another extension of networking, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And that was my main goal. And I reached out to some very close people, who I'd worked with for a long time first. And most of those people actually worked in human resources. Some of the people I'd worked with who were like HR partners, through my first years at Abercrombie, who were like just really great people. And they gave me some really sound advice too. Like at the beginning, I was kind of, my ego kind of got in the way a little bit, and I was like, no, I can't tell like thousands of people on LinkedIn or whatever it is that I lost my job. Like that's gonna sound really terrible, and it's gonna gonna really kind of like hurt me, or like make me feel like a loser or whatever. And one guy sat me down. He's like, listen, like you have to send that post out. Like if everybody knows that you're looking, then you'll find more success in that. And I've known a lot of people who've looked for a long time who've never done that. And I think there's there's warrant in getting your message out there and constantly searching for people you've never talked to before, and also people that you've talked with a lot, aka Justin. And and I think it's one of those things where it's like finding the time to connect with people so that you can have like meaningful conversations that could lead to something, but are also just like really great proponents of like feedback on your resume and feedback on your site, and just a general kind of like bitch about how hard it is, or like things like that, where you can really kind of, or just sharing stories like what have you been up to over the last 5 years or whatever. If you're leaving that good bridges in your background, and like not burning too many bridges, like you'll find that network will really rally around you. So I think it was just really great for me from like a mental health perspective to talk to really great people, but then also, to just keep reaching out and keep being like, okay, there's this job that I found at this company, but I don't know anybody there. So how can I like search around a little bit and kind of like cold call a few people, or like find a group that's like, I joined a group called the Collab, and I paid a little bit of money to do that a month, but it allowed me to be like in that chat. It was lots of like people in careers who were looking for roles too, but had been at other companies, and I'd reach out in the chat and I'd be like, does anyone know anyone at this company? And they'd be like, oh yeah, sure, reach out to this person. And so that got me a lot of really great conversations with people I'd never met before either. So it's just really um, yeah, it's just really helpful to like really be humble and just like get your message out there that you are looking.
I never heard of that paid subscription before. The collab you said?
Yeah, it's actually it's a really great group. It's a lady that runs it called Chrissy Hurt, and she forms a group. It's basically from of professionals who want to kind of like network with each other. And they do a few talks, and it's from like people who own businesses to people who have their own freelance agencies to people who are looking for jobs. It's really very retail and kind of fashion heavy, but it was kind of great for me because it was something that I had experience in. So
For those of you just tuning in, again, we're talking with Richard Irving, the creative director for the Hollister brand over at Abercrombie and Fitch, formerly from Gap, working on the Old Navy brand. When you left Old Navy and returned back to Abercrombie and Fitch, was there an awkwardness there?
when I came back, I was really I was really scared. I was like, wow, how's this gonna go? And and I kind of felt, yeah, and it was a lot of like me going back and leading people that I've never that hadn't left in the time that I'd gone. So it was really amazing to see those people again, and the whole experience has been really positive. I've gone back, and there's no one that I've kind of left before, because I said earlier, like, you got to leave those bridges unburned, and I left a good taste in their mouth when I left. I didn't leave on bad terms. I left on my own terms, which is great. So it was kind of like, maybe I was manifesting and planning something for the future. And to come back, it has been from CEO all the way down to people who I used to kind of work at, and who worked in the cafe at the company too, who have been so just so humbling. And it's just been really humbling to kind of hear them say, well, welcome back, and it's so good to have you back, because I was there for such a long time before. It felt really like, for the first week or so, I was like, oh my god, this is the most like awkward thing ever. But at the same time, it's just been really just really made me really kind of like realize how good I had it before, before I left. So it was actually really really heartwarming, and fantastic to go back and have everyone be so nice to me, I guess.
Yeah, and the reason I ask that, because a lot of people think when they leave a company, that's it, right? See you
Hmm.
later. I'm not
Yeah.
coming back. It takes a great amount of courage to consider going back from where you came. That's tough to do. I've seen that on the other end, where people have returned to a place of employment that they left and they didn't like returning back to that. But
Mhm.
your words are kind of encouraging because we have to consider that as options, especially in today's crazy economic climate.
Yeah, I tell you what, I said the same thing when I left. I was like, I'm never going back. That's it. I'm done. Like I don't, and my wife is always like, never say never. And I'm just like, no, like this is it. Like been here for like 14 years, which is a really long time for people to be at a place. And I was for a long time, I was like, I got to get out of here. I've got to move on. This has been too long. I need to go scratch some itch somewhere else. Um, and I was like, I'll never go back. But while I was away, leadership changed, and people that I'd wanted to work with who were on different teams became the leaders in the space who were the people who advocated for me to be back in it. And it kind of changed my mindset. And I was like, wow, it's really actually different and kind of more like I wanted it to be previously. Not that I would say anything bad about the people that I worked with in the first phase of my career there, because it was all fantastic. But it just felt like a new challenge, and some growth too. So it was kind of, I see it as a kind of like manifestation of what I actually needed it to be at the company when I left. So it was great. It was great to come back and experience that and have like um a new challenge and a new kind of like energy around it.
This is a question we get asked a lot, right? And especially with your experience in hiring creatives, standing out to employers, what qualities do you think companies look for in candidates? And how can some of the more aspiring designers make themselves more noticeable?
So that's been great. So that was something that I really, when I got laid off, I had a pretty run-of-the-mill website that was like, here's a little bit about it. Is the like the classic template, like Richard is a creative director from originally from Liverpool, England, blah blah blah, like that little blurb, and then projects, right? And that's what I had on my site. So I met with a few people, and I'm like, is this good enough? And people were like, yeah, it's totally great, it's fine. And then, what I'd learned actually was from my wife, who'd started up her own business over the last year or two. I had really gotten into a space where she had talked about her value. And you'll see in the link from my portfolio that it's not necessarily just a bunch of projects. It's the impact that I've made with those projects. And it's not like, here's some beautiful things. And I worked blah, blah, blah with a creative team and we designed this thing and look how beautiful it is. It's like, now this project made this much money for the company, or this project had like a 95% click-through rate. Like I got some like facts and figures of like the impact that I was going to make for a company, and what I saw from that change from the initial, because it was like maybe like a month of me reaching out to people with my initial website. Then as I was working on my website and I flipped and changed it, I started changing and talking about the value that I'm going to provide to that company or to anybody. And I saw a massive difference in my traction from conversations that I was having with people, with recruiters and with other like creative leads in the industry who were like really wanting to talk to me about it. And I completely accredit that to changing my perception and changing what my portfolio focus was, which was from just a doer into someone who's going to make an impact for you. And I think anyone can do that. And I think anyone can kind of talk up how much of an impact they're going to make for a company when they come in. And people will read it and people will look at it and they will see something that's unique rather than just another portfolio of projects like everybody else sees. So I think there's something to be said about that. And I can thank my wife for that for sure. And a few other people who really gave me some great advice, but it was really, really game changing for me.
Wow, that is amazing. Because yeah, when I'm on your site, it's a totally different perspective. It's all about how you're driving impact, how you're making
Mhm.
you're bringing the value, like you said. And you get kudos to your wife for helping you think that through.
I credit
S
a lot to her.
Yeah. Well, speaking of family life, Because this happens to all of us in the creative industry because it's a demanding industry. How do you avoid burnout and juggle all of those responsibilities while maintaining that healthy family life?
It's up to you. It's up to your values. It's up to you as a person to sit down and say, I'm going to dedicate myself to both. And I'm going to, it took me a long time when I have a 13-year-old daughter now. And when she was born, it took me, Abercrombie Fitch was a different company. It was a lot more hard hitting and a lot more hours. And throughout the time there, I had to literally, throughout the first like year or so, my wife and I would constantly get into discussions about like me not being able to pick up because I'm working late, or me having to work another late hours because we're going to have a meeting in the morning or whatever. Those hours really started to clock up and really started to affect family time for me, and family time is super important. So I had to literally sit my boss down and say, I have to leave 2 or 3 days a week. I have to leave like at 5 o'clock, and that wasn't that. That seems okay today, but it's that was early for me to to get out, and I was like, listen, like 2 or 3 days a week, I'm leaving at 5 o'clock. It doesn't matter what's going on. I'm leaving to go pick up my daughter and support my wife and all these things, and I think that helped me reframe what hours of work were like for me, and I really just owned it and just said that that's what I wanted, and because I was performing well at the company, they were really cool with that. So again, it's like one of those things where it's like the relationship that you're building, but also the values that you have and how much you stand for them, because it's not just you working for a company, it's a company has to work with you too, so I think it's about finding that place and finding a place that works for you, regardless of what they need. You also need to prioritize what you want, and if you want to prioritize, like, I don't know, if you want to prioritize your personal life, no matter what it is, kids, dogs, movies, like whatever, like stand for it, and stand up for what you want out of life as well, because it's not just, they don't own your life, they just own the time that you're working for them. So it's important for you to stand up for that, for sure, and find a company that helps you.
We tend to make work our life, and that's not always the healthiest, especially if it's affecting your life.
Hmm.
So you kind of have to know those limits.
It allows me to know, from what the managers that I had in the past versus what I'm like, I'm very different to them because I know my own values. And if you can find a leader that's just like, sure, go do your appointments and go do your things. Like, please look after yourself. That's the way I like to be. And I think that some of the best leaders I've had are very much like that themselves, in a sense of like, I'm leaving. I'm going to go do the appointment thing now, but I'm going to miss that meeting, but it's okay. So just really think about those things, and stand up for just your personal life.
You can learn more about tonight's guest, Richard Irving, at his website, richardirving.com, or on LinkedIn by searching Richard Irving. And if we don't get a chance to cover your questions, feel free to send Richard a DM, and yes, he will respond. In fact, there are many incredible mentors specializing in all different things, just waiting for you to connect with them.
And I have nine waiting conversations to connect with in my in my chat right now, and I promise I'll get to all of you.
No, but Richard is great. He's even, he takes a while to respond even to me, but he still responds. This man is busy, but I'm telling you guys, the advice, the insight that he has and that he can share with you is absolutely incredible. Now, if you are new to the Adobe Creative Career Discord, I just want to take some time to share one of the coolest things we have going on here, and that would be the mentorship program. On the server, there are a bunch of incredible mentors specializing in all different creative fields, from graphic design to motion design to video, illustration, photography, creative writing, and so much more. And they are just waiting for you to connect with them. So here's how to access that list. Hop on over to the Adobe Creative Career Discord and look for the mentorship category. Under that section, there's a channel called Find a Mentor. Within that space, there are bios for everyone and what they specialize in. And if you can't access that mentorship category, well, hop on over to server info, click on choose a role, and select mentorship under the opt-in categories listed right there. If you have a question, just post it in the chat. Here's one that comes from Dennis. He asks, "What are your thoughts on AI affecting the sphere?"
Oh yeah, the ultimate question right now, right? I think it's definitely having a big moment, just like the metaverse had a big moment, right? Like 2 or 3 years ago, just like um, NFTs had a big moment. I think it's interesting. We're talking a lot about it at work. It's how it affects writing within from a fashion perspective and retail perspective in ecom, like how you're writing into product descriptions, how you're writing product titles, like things like that. That's the kind of thing that companies are looking into now. We're using the new Photoshop tools too to help us with our swipe and our concepting. So, as if anyone's working in the art direction space, like it's very hard to find the right image, and AI is helping us a lot with trying to kind of sell concepts and really working through those visuals. We're using that a ton actually. So what it breeds is a lot of conversation of efficiencies, right? Within the ecom space, I've seen lots of really interesting content out there for how to, because right now you're in a studio and you're getting models in and you're shooting those models on a daily basis, and you're hitting like, I don't know, like 1,000 shots a day. It's quite a beast. So there's lots of people looking in that space too, right? Where you can generate your products through AI and generate models through AI. So those are all very like visual creative pieces that I think are going to help. But my thoughts on the whole thing is that we're having a big swing towards it right now. And it's kind of like making people a little bit like nervous, but like a little bit kind of like wary of what it's going to do. But I think at some point there will be this kind of like leveling off, and the human AI connection will be the way that we do it in the future. So it's going to be like a good mix of us. Hopefully, hopefully it doesn't get to the scary news part of like it taking over the world. But like it's to me, it's like it's about that human AI connection that I think that is always going to be really important and gonna really kind of drive us forward. So but get on the train, man, because it's a train and it's at the station, and if you're on it, then I think it's gonna be great.
Yeah, that's a good piece of advice right there, because a lot of people are fighting AI. I think we just need to learn to live with it. And you can position yourself too. It's still going to need humans to write the inputs into it.
Hmm.
There's an art to this, and we covered it in some of the AMAs too. Let me ask you this, because you brought up being on photo shoots and whatnot. What are some of the more misunderstood aspects of working with talent on photo shoots? Because a lot of people think of the fashion world, they think of, oh, it's glamorous. There's all these parties, right? You're working with models, and you and I both know that's not the case. I mean, it's a lot different than people realize.
Yep.
Well, what are some of those misconceptions?
I think some of the misconceptions, it depends what kind of part of the industry you're in. The misconceptions is it's all like sunshine and roses. It's literally some of the hardest work I've ever done in my career. There's a lot of money being spent by the company to do it. There's lots of different pieces and parts to it that need to be figured out, and you need a broad team to do it. I would never expect, depending on the size, but I never expect you to have all the skills of all the things of all the people that are doing it. People get tired, people get hungry, people get grouchy. Like it's a real thing, and I think there's one of those things where it's definitely one of those things where it's like for you or really not for you. But give it a try if you're interested in it. But I think it involves a lot of experience, a lot of waiting around, essentially, if you know what I mean, from like a career perspective, lots of patience, because it's something that takes a long time to build up the skill, to be able to really own the space and to do it properly. I'm going to tell you, in all aspects of everything, I'm always learning. So I think it's one of those things to just be like open to and humble to. But if you're really interested in it, there's amazing people working in the space, and if you can network in that space and really get yourself on some shoots and start kind of like helping out, and really getting to that part where you're like kind of like I don't know, like working working in the trenches for a little bit, it's really going to help you to kind of understand the whole thing, so you're um not kind of jumping ahead, if you know what I mean. So I think that space can be really overwhelming if you rush into it, I guess, and expect too much out of it too quickly. But from a shoot perspective, it's really rewarding. And like I said, it's some of the hardest work I've ever done.
Yeah, because you're working with real people, and real people have emotions, they have feelings, they have thoughts.
Yeah. And you have a brief too, right? And you got to hit that brief. And if one of your models isn't feeling it that day, you got to make some quick snap creative decisions to fix it. So be prepared to be thinking on your feet if you're getting into that space.
You were recently featured on a podcast, right?
Yeah, I was.
Tell me about that.
It was actually part of my own doing. It was within that collab space. I actually developed a friendship with someone who's very much like myself, based in the Bay Area, and we connected through the collab. And they advocate people getting together to really kind of like interview each other. So basically, there's two podcasts. There's one with myself and David, who's also a creative director. He's interviewing me, and then we do another podcast where I interview him. So it goes through my career story of where I started off and what happened, and how I got into the retail space and all that kind of stuff. So it's really kind of like deep dive into my career story. So that platform, the collab, which is a membership based piece, but it's really a great space if you really want to delve in and get some experience in networking going. That's a really great space to do that. So that was part of me looking for a job and finding different avenues to get myself out there and sell myself. So
It's more than just sending a bunch of messages to people on LinkedIn. It's more than just doing all the stereotypical ways to connect with people. You got to think outside the box. Maybe connecting with other podcasts. Ask them if you can be a guest on it. I mean, their shows are always looking for guests. They need you people to reach out to them, and people meaning you in the audience. To wrap up here, what are the three keywords or qualities that define a successful creative career?
I think expect resilience. So expect change, expect things to pivot, expect the client to be painful, but also you'll find really good clients too. So resilience in that space. Um, Always looking at what's the next best thing that you can be doing. Like, so be proactive is huge. If people see you being proactive, you're going to get opportunities. If they see you kind of just like sitting and doing the thing that you're asked to do, then you're going to plateau within your career, I think. So always be looking for that next opportunity and be proactive about that. And then just have fun, that sounds really cheesy, but like enjoy your day and enjoy what you do. And the more fun you can bring to your job, and the more as creatives, we can be a little bit like in our cave sometimes and a little bit reclusive, but popping out of that, I know a lot of creative people are very expressive and have some great, I see all these little avatars in here that make me smile. Like, there's some great stuff. So I know there's some great humor in there. Design and creative folks are my favorite people. So just like, reach out, have some fun, have some good conversations, and enjoy it, And I think that's just something that is really, really fun, really good to take with you, just to kind of like keep yourself humble. I mean, obviously bad situations aren't fun, but I think that, you can really kind of bring some good energy to the work that you're doing, and really get passionate about it.
Great advice here, everybody. This about wraps it up for this episode of Adobe Spotlight Sessions. But I just want to thank my guest Richard Irving for taking the time to join us tonight and discuss his incredible career journey. Be sure to connect with him on LinkedIn. Go to his website at richardirving.com and connect with him right here on Discord. Just send him a message. He will respond. If you enjoyed this program, catch all the latest updates for the next Spotlight sessions and all the great content here in the Adobe Creative Career Discord by following the upcoming events at the top of the server so you can see what's coming next. Thanks to all you who tuned in to listen to me, your host, Justin Bamforth, aka JBam. You can always find me on Discord, LinkedIn, or on my website, justinbamforth.com. And again, it's richardirving.com, the star of tonight's show. Be sure you connect with him. Thank you so much, my friend. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Justin. It was great having me. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
For more conversations with creative professionals, subscribe to the Spotlight Sessions podcast or check out the Adobe Creative Career Discord. Links are posted in the show notes, or visit adobediscord.com and click on Adobe Creative Career.